part of what made the year impressive too was seeing Kyle Shanahan kind of become fully actualized, or at least have the results that we thought. It wasn't just that they had a great year. It was toe-to-toe with Sean Payton in an epic game, toe-to-toe with Andy Reid in the Super Bowl. And one thing Middlecoff and I have talked about a few times, I thought one of the most illuminating things I heard from Kyle Shanahan this year was on a pregame interview with you, talking about how he scripts plays, and not just that he scripts great plays, right? But he has the IQ to script the plays, but the EQ to realize what's happening in his locker room, recognize he has to have the play script 50-50 run and pass, because if it's 75% pass, then the running backs start moping before the game, well, we're not going to run the ball today, and vice versa. Right. What was it like for you spending the whole year with him? What did you come out of the year thinking specifically about Kyle?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by him. To the same level, probably being around a young John Gruden when I saw John and what he was doing creatively. And to another extent, being around, he was older than John, but a young Bill Callahan and what he meant to the running game, and just being around great offensive minds, Tom Cable, in offensive line play, and other coaches. But with Kyle, I mean, you're talking about Mike Shanahan's father, first of all. So, he's in diapers learning about how to run the outside zone stretch run game and all the movement, everything around it. So, and then have him be at this stage of his career, a young guy, very much a guy's guy, and you can approach him. I love the interviews I did with him, and I couldn't do them all because of my other responsibilities, but I interviewed him on television for 15, 20 minutes on Thursdays when I could, and then we'd play a chunk of that on the radio pregame show. It was challenging because, like, when I interviewed Gruden, it was right before the game. In the early years, it would be the Saturday night before the game, and then we'd spend, hour or two together just talking. But then later on, it was right before the game, and it was when he was really relaxed. It was time to go now. Everything's done. All the maniacal preparation is done, and now it's just that 2-hour window. And we would talk, for a half hour, 45 minutes, right leading up to when the officials would come in for that meeting. And I would hang in the meeting with him a lot for those. But John was completely relaxed, and he would open up now. Where Kyle, it was because it was earlier in the week, he was still in that game prep mode, and also because the nature of the interview was going to be played on TV the night before. It's quite possible that the opposing coach is going to sit in his hotel room and watch this interview, or in the world we live in, it's going to go out on Twitter. And someone, so it was with John, I could craft the interview not as concerned, but obviously it's Al Davis's Raiders, so you're very concerned about giving away state secrets, but not as concerned back then. With Kyle, it was how could I ask a question that would elicit a response to be able to get consumable information from one of the great football minds of offensive football. And what makes Kyle so good is he is crafting offensive football to decode defensive football, which he's also taken the time to learn. So he knows all the basic principles of what they're trying to do on that side. So how do I get them into a compromising position, which is the both sides of the ball? So it's not just offense. So it's a full football genius mentality from a second-generation football coach. He grew up around it. He didn't learn it necessarily the way other coaches have learned it. He learned it, by crayons as a kid, around his house. So how could I get that? So that was a challenge every week. But the interview you're talking about was probably the best moment we've had. And I remember you texting me right after that. And it was, how do I engage him in a broad-based macro way enough that's not specific where it can be used against him, but in a micro inside mentality way where he's willing to divulge this because it's not game plan specific. And that was it. And I forget, it came up because the 49ers were so good coming out of halftime of games. They had a streak there early middle of the year where they scored at a very high percentage of the time that first possession of the second half. And the thought was, we've heard about coaches scripting plays to start. Do you script plays to start the second half? And then he got into it. Yes. How many? 8. How's the 8 broken down? 4 offense, 4 defense. And then, well, do you script plays to open games? Yes. You know, Bill Walsh, it was the 15 in the openers. And he did that to start. But as your point was, 15 is an odd number. So if you're going to come up with 15, you're going to have an imbalance between run and pass. So the players are going to we're going to run the ball more this week, coach? No, we're not going to run it more. So let's do 16. And then I think he got to 24. So the bottom line is he does script 24 plays for each game, 12 runs, 12 passes. He may not call them that way, but it's perfect balance. And then the same to start the second half. So nobody in the meeting room would think this is more of it, because we're not going to do that. You're like the Minnesota playoff game, the Green Bay playoff game. You think they went into the game thinking we're going to run it? I forget what percentage of time it was, but it was ridiculous. Well, if they can't stop the run, we'll run it every play until they can stop it. And the Green Bay game, they weren't getting 4 and 6. They were getting Mostert touchdowns, play after play. And like, wow. And that 1 3rd and long when they ran it, Mostert went it untouched. So that's what a great coach is. That's Don Shula, you know, running it heavy when he had Zonka, Kick, and Morris. And then when he had Marino and, you know, the Marx brothers, he changed. That's what coaching is. So that's was able to go into it. But that's, you know, yeah, it was great being around Kyle and being around his mind and observing him and how he does things and even his quirkiness. And, you know, as a football coach, you want things to be meticulous, whether you're playing on a Thursday night or a Monday night or a Sunday night or a Sunday at 1 o'clock or whatever it is. There's a mentality and a process to getting to that kickoff time. And you can't, it's like Greg Popovich. Pop always said, you can't cut steps. You can't not do this, or it's going to show up in a game. And in the second week of the year, you're going to lose a game because you tried to cut a corner. You cannot cut a corner. You gotta build the team up through fundamentals, and it's the same way to prepare. So yeah, it was fascinating to be around Kyle, knowing what his dad did and observing his dad for so long, and then watch him, how he prepares, how he calls a game, how he sets up plays, and ultimately the evolution and the sophistication of the way his father and Alec Gibbs and the Raiders of the late 80s, the 49ers of the 90s, the Broncos of the 90s and 2000s ran the ball, and the way he took that fundamental foundation of his father's concepts and modernized it to what we're seeing today from this offense.